Hi, good evening. We're here with John Mcentee from Incantation. I thought it'd be nice to have you on Into the Pit, and especially because I'm more focused on the European side here, Germany especially. So
Awesome.
glad you could make
It's
it.
great to be here.
Cool. So, as we just discussed, you just came from Mexico. You guys are getting amped for more shows that you're luckily able to make now in the US, as you said with Nile.
Yeah,
Oh,
we're super
wow.
stoked about it.
And
Yeah,
I also saw you yesterday. I was browsing through Partizan, the big death
yes.
metal festival here. I saw you on the billing.
Yes. We're on the billing, but honestly, I don't think we're playing. I don't know what's going on, but I think as far as our booking agent said is that it wasn't happening, but I don't
Okay.
know 100%, but as far as I'm aware of, there was other plans for August besides Europe, so I'm not really sure. Maybe that's getting squeezed in somehow, but
Yeah.
somehow I hope it's not miscommunication between Partisan and the booking agent, because we love Partisan and we definitely want to play for sure. I mean, every chance we get to play, it's a great fest.
Yes.
I
Yes.
just
Absolutely.
Yeah, just to be honest about it, I really I don't know if it's happening this year or not. I did see the poster, but and I talked to the booking agent, and it's kind of up in his hands to kind of sort that out.
And as we just discussed, things are looking so uncertain over here. A lot of friends of mine and myself, we are sort of, yeah, sort of biting our nails to see if we can finally make it to these festivals again. And I was actually looking forward to seeing you guys there. But
Well, thank
well,
you. Yeah, I mean,
we'll just have
trust
to
me, we
see.
would love to play there. I mean, we are. I know we are scheduled to be in Europe in July. I just things haven't fallen together 100% because I still think there's some uncertainty. So I don't know. It's just let's face it. Let's look at it this way. For Europe, it's like everything's really uncertain right now. So anything I say as far as what we're doing in Europe is just speculation because you know
Disclaimer.
yeah, I mean the booking agent could tell me all he wants, but as far as if it's actually going to happen, I think it's just too early to tell
Yeah.
100%. I mean, I just seen recently that what was it, the Phil Anselmo and the Illegals had to cancel some of their European appearances. I guess it was supposed to happen in February or January. I mean, something like that. So, and I heard of another U.S. band. I can't think of who it was that was also canceling their tour, and I think it was like in March or something. So it's creeping up towards the summer.
Yes.
It really sucks.
Oh, terrible.
Yeah, I sure hope not. I mean, this is what it's going to be would be the third summer if it gets canceled, the third summer in a row in Europe without festivals. I mean, that's terrible.
Yes, it's a disaster. Well,
Yeah, I mean,
there's
you
been the
almost have
odd,
to. Go ahead.
sorry, there's been the odd little show around here. The one they had a couple of local bands, and they had it in a theater, and it was seated, so that worked. But
Yeah,
obviously, you didn't have the masses and stuff, and the other one was actually Marduk in a very small club with Valkyria, and so this whole black metal assault thing. But that was like normal. That was standing, and actually the normal capacity of people that club usually has. So, and when that happened, I thought, okay, things might pick up from here. Yeah, let's see.
yeah, it's crazy. I mean, I don't think in the U.S. there's any more capacity problems. Um, I mean, I know some of the Nile shows are in probably bigger venues than
Mm.
what we would normally do, but I think they booked it in really big venues just because they want to make sure that in case there's some sort of distancing thing
Yes.
that it's kind of taken care of beforehand. But and for me, it's like I prefer playing, a really killer packed club than
Yes.
a venue that's too big just because they need social distance in, and definitely would not want to play a show with people just sitting down
Oh,
watching.
terrible.
I mean, it just, you might as well just watch it on, on YouTube or something at home if you're going to sit down, because part of what makes a show great is feeling that energy of the crowd.
Yeah.
It's always weird to like be on stage and play and then, have the crowd, you know, disassociated from what you're doing. I mean, even if they're sitting here watching, it just isn't the same, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
so I
No,
sure
I
hope
hear you.
that.
Those are also my favorite shows. I prefer the small club shows. The energy's there.
Yeah.
And there's one club here and they had some really spectacular bands. I mean, they had Malevolent still, Malevolent Creation with Brett Hoffman on vocals, and
Awesome.
it was like they were playing your living room basically, and the energy was just, I mean, it ripped your
Yeah.
head off. It's just,
Yeah. There's
wow.
some, I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where, I mean, I'm not going to complain if we have to play bigger places because too many people are going to be there. But I, I do have to say a smaller venue with a underground vibe as far as for playing a show is like the most fun,
Yes.
just having a packed house and just having that energy. There's something about just having the people right there. Cause even when we play some of the bigger festivals, they sometimes have like a barrier that's, I don't know, could be
It
a
feels
couple
like
feet.
6 meters or 8 meters away. Almost.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it's great to see all those people there, but I don't know. I want them on top of me. I want them closer to me. I feel it feels weird to be like, not be able to just, put my hand out and be like, yeah, what's up or something,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it just, you know, like I said, I'm not
Totally.
complaining. I mean, I love playing the bigger festivals too, but there's nothing like playing a small tight venue with a lot of fucking people packed in there, and just, it's usually like stinky and hot, but it's just metal as fuck. I
Yes,
mean, for death
absolutely.
metal, it's just
Killer
death metal, I
energy.
think, was just made for that in person vibe. It's not supposed to be. It's not like other styles where maybe they're more theatrical, and it's that way. It's entertaining. Our way of being entertaining is being in your face and feeling that rage. Feeling that darkness in the music.
I guess, something like Halloween you can watch on a big stage.
Yeah,
And it's like kind of, that's cool. But yeah, as you said, I prefer the more raw acts, really full frontal, just there.
yeah,
Really
yeah.
kicks.
Me too.
I've been actually watching the Rock Fantasy quite a bit.
Oh,
And
have
I'm
you?
really
Okay.
enjoying those. That's really good. So I always keep my eyes peeled and Hudson Valley Squares and stuff. So it's really,
Yeah, yeah. It's
really
really
enjoying
cool
it.
to be a part of that. That whole thing came about just. I mean, I've been friends with Stephen Keeler from Rock Fantasy, the record store, for years, and I think he asked me just to be on the show sometime, and we did an interview, and then we just started talking, and things kind of just there was kind of like a chemistry there, and then he just asked me, if I wanted to be a part of like a year-ending ranking thing, and then after that, it just turned into like he wanted, he asked myself, he asked Robin Mason, both of us. I think it was both of us for like the first two that he asked to kind of help him with it, and it just went from there, and it's been a lot of fun. I mean, you know, it's really cool to be able to just, do these talks, voice your opinion on, stuff that isn't super important, but just, music opinion stuff, and get to, invite some great artists from, different styles. Especially for me, it's great when I get to, well, there's two, I mean, the best ones are like either my friends that I can get on, and
Yeah.
talk and chat and just be very casual about. But then also it's great to meet some of the legends that I grew up with too, like it was great to, talk with like Raven and Grim Reaper and, Venom Inc. guys and stuff, like these bands that like I've liked since I was a child, and I get to kind of reminisce, and it reminds me of that enjoyment I had
Yes. Yes.
as a child of hearing these bands and growing into the person that I am musically.
Did you guys have Eric Meyer from Dark Angel on?
Oh yeah, that was
Yeah, that
great.
was
Yeah,
my favorite. I was like, wow, I couldn't believe that you could actually, I mean, apart from Gene Hoglan, that you could actually
yeah.
speak to any one of the other members, you know, it's just like, oh, they
Well,
exist.
yeah, Eric is a great dude. He's a total character. I mean, he's been on a couple of episodes of the Rock Fantasy File, and he's just a really, he's just a really nice guy, and he's really
Yeah.
cool. And you know, since being on the show, I became not really good friends with him, but friends, and we keep in touch a little bit here and there. And he's just such a cool dude to talk to, very
Mm.
positive, and just he loves talking about gear and guitars and stuff like that. It was just funny because the episode we did with him, it was Dark Angel, but it was mostly like talking about, guitar gear and stuff like that. Ended up being, showing off his axes, and it's great because Eric Meyer is like an inspiration for me as a guitar player. I mean, Dark Angel, holy crap, dude! When Darkness Descends first came out, it was one of the one of those albums that pushed thrash to another level, which it was like kind of like one of the building blocks of what death metal turned out
Yes,
to being,
yes,
and I mean, for
yes.
me, I mean, I loved We Have Arrived, but Darkness Descends, I mean, that album is like, one of the top
Unrivaled.
thrash albums ever. I mean, it really is. I mean, people love that album, but honestly, it's not as it's not enough people talk about that album as the impact that it had. Because I could tell you, me and all my friends, and we heard that, it was just like, if people were into like Slayer or something like that before that, and they heard Dark Angel, it was just like that was like taking what Slayer was doing and making it eviler, making it darker. I mean, that
Yes.
that album, there's just a magic on that album.
But isn't it, don't you find it amazing? I can put it on any day and it hasn't lost its ferocity. Hasn't,
Oh
the
no,
sound is killer to this day. I
yeah,
wouldn't change a thing. Nothing.
yeah, and I know, and every time you listen to it, it makes you want to like headbang. It just you
Yeah.
feel it, just the way the drums are hitting, and just the way it starts off is just ah, it's a
Evil.
it it's a to me it's a genius album. It's one of the most important albums, I would say, definitely in
I think you're definitely right. It doesn't get mentioned enough. I had a discussion with someone a few years back on Rock Hard Festival, and he had a amazing battle vest on with all these sort of
yeah.
more Bay Area sort of influenced bands, and I just said to him, listen. He said, "What do you listen to?" I was like, "No, I prefer." My favorite thrash albums of all time are probably Rain and Blood, obviously, and
Yeah.
Darkness Descends, and I love the first Exhorder album,
Mhm.
Assault in the Vatican, and yeah, Pleasure to Kill, probably,
Yeah,
it's
Pleasure to Kill
another
is a
one.
great one. Yeah.
And he was like, Dark Angel, yeah, never really, no, I don't know.
Wow.
I was just like, whoa, man. Sure, give me your
Yeah.
address. I'll send you a copy.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was an important moment in thrash metal because there was I think there was starting a divide around that time of the bands that were trying to go, say, more of a commercial thrash way, and then there were bands. I would say Pleasure to Kill was another album like Darkness Descends that was like trying to go in a little bit more darker way, or a little bit more less establishment
Yes,
thrash. I don't know
yes,
how you want to
yes.
describe it,
I
but
know what you mean. Yeah.
it's a different thing. It's like uh, almost it's like it's not death metal, but it has the building blocks of what death metal, or to help push death metal. I mean, any band you talk to, any of us old school, like say for our local scene, like Suffocation, Immolation, or Mortician, any of those bands, if you ask them, you know what's one of their favorite thrash albums, they're going to definitely say Darkness Descends, and it's probably an influence on all of our music. I mean, when they used to play shows here, it was just amazing. I mean, Darkness Descends and like Possess Seven Churches are two bands that are just like that thrash. For us in the US, there were two US bands that really were influential in turning thrash into something more evil that was borderline death metal.
Yes, yes. No, and I think similarly now coming back to Incantation, it's I'll tell you a little story. It was actually beginning of '93. I was in South Africa, and I joined my first band there, and I frequented this club that had a metal afternoon on Saturday.
Cool.
And there was this guy. He had a catalog of Nuclear Blast and Relapse records on sale. And I slowly but surely, as I had money, as a student, I sort of picked one, and it would be Pungent Stench, and then I'll pick something else. And he had Onward to Golgotha and Effigy of the Forgotten.
Okay.
Those two. And he said, like, well, you can take them along. He said, it's quite extreme. And I said, like, well, I sort of like Death and Morbid Angel and stuff. And he said, like, yeah, but listen to it. It's not quite the same, And I was like, okay, cool. So, and I must say, in the beginning, I couldn't get into the Suffocation and the first Incantation album.
Yeah.
It took me a while. It took me quite a bit. And then, and I must say, only a couple of years ago, when this movement started with bands like Grave Miasma, this cavernous death metal, really, like Corpsest, those kind of bands, those Finnish bands, Funebrarum, and that's when I sort of did a full circle again. I said, like, now hold on, but this comes from somewhere, and I did recall, and it's sort of, and I could personally, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I can see that influence coming through again.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, trust me, it's flattering, that there's so many bands now that are influenced by us. I mean, we've influenced, like, it's crazy, but we've been influenced from everything from like, porn grind death bands to, this cavernous death metal stuff, which is probably closer to, where we are as a band than say the porn grind stuff. But yeah, I don't see it either. But you talk to some of those people, and especially back in the '90s, they were like super big fans of ours. And I never really understood it, but obviously, to each their own, But
hey, maybe Pungent Stench was closer, but yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, Pungent Stench is a great band too.
We're like mentors.
Yeah, but what was it? Yeah, it's great. I mean, I started noticing it probably around the time like Dead Congregation came around and stuff like that, bands like that. There were a few bands before that were kind of influenced by us, like Drawn and Quartered. They've been around for quite a while.
Yes.
And I know those guys forever. They'd always come to our shows, and they were definitely influenced by us, which, I mean, they're a great band, and they've established themselves on their own stuff, but it was just really cool. And there was another band called Hybertus Mortis from Florida, which really was influenced by us too. But it wasn't until like and this was like in the mid to late '90s, those bands that they came on our radar really. But then in say mid 2000s, I started hearing like Dead Congregation and a few bands like that, and they were really influenced. Like a lot of them were actually influenced by like the Blasphemy album was the like Dead Congregation kind of cites as their influence, and they go back from there, But it just it's crazy now because there's so many bands out there that when I listen to it, I get I feel weird, like this is cool, but this is very familiar, like there's something, because I could tell the influence. It's kind of it's cool, but it's also weird, because I mean, do I really want to listen to bands that sound like us? I don't know if I do. Like sometimes I think it's super cool. Other times I think am I just weird or something, because, if I'm playing this kind of stuff, why would I want to listen to the exact same thing? It'd be like Suffocation, listen to a Suffocation clone band. Maybe they do. But for me, sometimes, if it's like, I would say if it's too much like us, I sometimes veer away from it because it's no interest in my listening enjoyment, but if they're able to add extra things to it or add their, I guess the most important thing is that if they add their own
Yeah.
personality to it,
I
I
think
think it could be great.
that's what Grave Miasma sort of managed to pull off. I think with that whole, it sounds like the whole production is really drenched in delay,
Yeah.
and it's like really so spherical, so wow, so ethereal, and it's this churning rhythmic, you know. And
Yeah.
I think they added a little bit more of that,
Yes.
and
Yeah, they
possibly
expanded on it, which is a normal thing for newer bands when they're influenced by something. It's like you take the tools that you have from the past and kind of expand on it and make it your own. And bands that do that, I think a lot of them are really cool, you know, in my opinion.
yeah, for sure, definitely. What I was amazed to see is that you were actually a member of Revenant.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that was my first, like, I'll say real band. You know, I played in like cover bands before that. And, you know, Revenant, even though it was like the early stages of it, it was the first band where like we actually were writing our own songs mostly, you know, and just I learned like a lot from being in that band as far as just being in a band. It's kind of funny because when I recently moved to Greensboro, North Carolina, and the original guitar vocalist Henry Vegian lives only about an hour away from me now. So we've gotten together a few times, and it's just so funny to hear his perception of the old stories, thinking about the parts of it that I remember, and it makes me remember stuff. And you know, I was really happy to be a part of that band. It was a big deal for me, but I didn't realize that I had more input on that band than I realized I did at the time. To just like, you know, really taking it, like taking the band seriously. Like, because for me, I was like, I'm in a real band now. I really like doing this. We're still trying to find our way and, you know, our style, because it was a very Revenant was a very a mixture between like the bands like Wehrmacht and Cryptic Slaughter mixed with, you know, Dark Angel and Creator and Celtic Frost and Voivod. You know, it's kind of like just a hodgepodge of all the stuff we were like, and we're just trying to figure out what we were. But yeah, I learned so much from that, because I like all of a sudden I was in this band that I thought kind of had potential, and it was like, this is my life now, and I gotta like take this seriously. Like we gotta make game plans and do, you know, like I started thinking in that way, and it really prepared me for when I decided that I wanted to do Incantation. I realized I had all the tools, you know, or not all of them, but a lot of the tools to start the band in a, I wouldn't say professional way, but just a serious way where, you know, okay, I'm starting this band. I want to be serious about it. Like, this is not just a weekend warrior kind of thing, you know, and there's nothing wrong with a weekend warrior. But for me, it's like,
But it's
no,
not for
this is
everyone.
serious. We have, you know, we have goals. We have, you know, we have to keep up to standards. We have a vision on how we want the music to be. And, you know, Revenant was like my way of realizing my, I guess, realizing my vision for Incantation. And I could have easily stayed in Revenant, and, you know, it could have been some kind of mixture of, you know, where they went and what I wanted to do. It could have worked, because I mean, Henry and myself, we had a great working relationship. It was there was just one of those situations where just a bunch of things clashed at the same time, as far as you know, life-changing experiences on both of our ends, and then just, you know, me being the I'm pushy when it comes to band stuff. Like, I want to put my foot on the gas all the time, you know, and sometimes people need space and need to, you know, sit back for a little bit. And I know now not to do that so much, but back then it was like, no, it was like full forward all the time, or you're just not serious enough, you know, like,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, it was, you know, it was one of those things where, like, if you were like super serious and believed in my vision, I was a great person to be around, but if you wanted to do things casually, I'd be a terrible person to be around, because I'd always be getting on people's cases, like, stop being slackers, let's do this. We got it's me, because to me, I look at it like, this means the world to me. This isn't just music. This is like my personal expression. And this is not, I don't want weekend warriors. I don't want people that, don't believe in the idea. And to be fair, early on with the Incantation band, there wasn't a lot that was really in the style that I was thinking out there. So it wasn't like it's super easy to find people like death metal. I mean, at that point, most people, they knew the earache stuff. They knew some of the early Roadrunner stuff, but they didn't really understand that I wanted to kind of add that creepiness of, say, necrophagia, that darkness of like a Necrovore in there. Rochivore was a great band too, and they were definitely inspirational, as far as like, we played shows with them, and they were so fucking heavy that we always thought, fuck, we got to be just as heavy, if not heavier than this. It was like a bar to try to, it was like a healthy competition, because you see them play and it was like, fuck, it's so heavy, and you're just like, you want to not necessarily out heavy them, but you don't want to sound like wimps next to them. But then, I was getting a lot of demos and stuff from like a lot of the Scandinavian bands, like Old Crematory, Funebrary, Nihilist, Early Entombed, Unleashed, a ton of bands, Grave, So I was hearing all that stuff, and that stuff wasn't, it was only like a small core of people in the States that really had access to that stuff. So it was like, these, not all of them had albums out when I was trying to form a band. So people didn't really know where I was coming from, but there were certain people that were thought, oh, this is kind of cool. Like, they might've looked at it as like taking, like, say, Morbid Angel and Obituary and Death, and like putting it on like heavy steroids or something like that, for like heaviness or something, maybe less tight and less nice as those bands, but more of that punk rock hate to it or something like that.
Yes. But I would say mission accomplished, because that was the feeling I got right there back then, when my buddy had all his LPs there for sale, and there was just nothing that was in that style. There were bands like Sinister and stuff, but it was this very polished,
it's just different,
more Florida sort of approach to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's and I'm very proud that I was able to accomplish that. Especially for like the first album, we all came together, we all hunkered down and just really like worked hard at the craft. We jammed those songs so much. They were a part of all of us. It was a great accomplishment, and it shows that, there was, because the most important thing for me really on any album is that it feels real, it feels authentic, and has heart to it. It has to be aggressive and brutal and heavy, but it has to be honest, and I think the album is very honest, and it expresses all of us at that time in the band, and we were all just focused like a laser beam to be like, something. Basically, we were focused to be what we became, I guess is the best way to describe it. But I definitely, it was a lot different, because there was, when I say we're punk rock influenced, I don't mean we're punk rock influenced as in a way of like, riff wise, or they're punky.
No.
We're punk rock as far as there's an attitude, there's a hatred in the music that comes out, that transcends the tightness. You could play the riffs and they could sound good and they could be tight, but they don't have that personality to it, because I besides being into thrash metal and heavy metal, I also grew up with bands like the Dead Kennedys, MDC, Black Flag, just a ton of Agnostic Front. A lot of those bands I grew up really liking, and they had this attitude to the music that it wasn't just like, because you can listen to a punk, if you play a punk rock riff simple, probably half of them sound the same, but it's because when you play it with attitude and you feel the pissed offness, that's what makes it special.
Exactly. But I think this,
and one last thing too, is that what kind of my personal mantra, and it became kind of mantra of the band was, the riff itself doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what notes we're playing. It doesn't matter the structure of the riff, nothing. What matters is when you listen to the riff, how does it make you feel? And that's what's important, because who gives a crap about, it doesn't matter what the notes are. The notes are just the vehicle to get a feeling across. And a lot of people at that time, especially, were not looking at it that way. They were looking at preciseness. They were worried about, they're worried about having their album be, perfectly, as tight as possible, clean as possible. And they weren't thinking about the feeling of it, like, because without trying to go too much of a rant, musicians sometimes get too caught up in their own bullshit when it comes to playing their instrument, and they're always worried about, oh, am I playing tight enough? Am I everything tight? And in some circumstances it works great, and some bands do a great job of putting tightness and feeling together, but most bands concentrate too much on the tightness and forget about the feeling of the music. I mean, when you play guitar, you you want to feel the notes. You don't want to be like, oh wow, that guy has great technique. Who gives a fuck if the song sucks or the solo sucks? Who cares about the technique? It's how the technique helps make the song sound is what's good.
This is what that leads us to the next thing. And I had a discussion with Bill Matoya the other day, and we had a little interview, and we talked about productions and how sterile everything is starting to sound these days. Because everything, I mean, obviously with Pro Tools, you have the ability to chop, copy paste, shift, put everything on the grid. And what you end up with is these lifeless, sure, the riffs are there, the speed is there. Countless bands that I listen to that come out and I go, where's the life in this? The drums don't sound real. There's no edge and rawness to the guitars. Everything is just so overproduced.
I know. Well, that's the problem with, technology. It's like, it's a good thing to have. It helps out a lot and it saves a lot of time. It's made recording a lot cheaper, but at the same time, yeah, you're right. It sterilizes things. There's nothing like not giving a crap about what time signature or what what tempo you're playing something at. We recorded those early albums. We recorded on the 2-inch reel tape, and we would listen back to it and be like, oh, okay, maybe you played that one part too fast. Let's try to fix that. But we if it sounded good, we would just say, well, it fits. It just, the song just sounds right. It doesn't, like, every time this riff comes across, it doesn't have to be at 150 beats per minute each time, because maybe the riff before it, the way it transitions into it, having it pushed a little faster or pushed a little slower or pull back a little slower, I guess I'd say, is necessary just to make the song sound good. That's a big
it's that playing behind and in front, that push pull.
Exactly. That
tension
works. Yeah, this was a bone of contention that we had actually in Incantation, is that we tried to do a more tempo mapped album with Profane Nexus. It's not all tempo map, but it's like a lot of it is. And we like the songs and we like the album, but we all felt that it was a little sterile. It didn't have the just didn't have the mood, the feeling. I mean, it still has it, but not as much as it should, we'll say, Sometimes it felt like it doesn't need to be this same tempo. So we made sure we did Profane Nexus, not Profane Nexus. Well, I did Sect of All Divinities, that we just played through the songs, and, if there was something substantial, that was timing was weird, we'd redo that part or something. But for the most part, we just listened to the songs and we're just like, acted like we just were recording on tape and just listened to the songs and said, that's how the song's supposed to sound. That's good. And, if we went and try, we couldn't just play one measure and then copy that part over again, because it's not fitting on the next one, because it's not all locked to a grid. And to me, that makes the album just so much better. I mean, just listening back to it, I could feel the energy in it, because we're not stripping it out. It's like, it was something that I remember back in the mid 90s. I used to say a lot is that, a lot of bands were worried about being the fastest. They're trying to be the fastest blast band possible. But it was, to me, a lot of it was out of context. And it didn't make sense, because with Incantation, we have blast beats in it, but it was never like we're doing this because we want to be the fastest or whatever. We just wanted the riff to express itself properly, So it's not saying that it can't be the fastest drum beat ever in the song. Maybe if that works, that's great. But when I started thinking it was weird when people started saying like, this is the fastest thing ever, and like priding themselves on that, and it's just like, well, so what? You win the race, but it doesn't. It really does not matter when it comes down to it, because the speed is not. Speed doesn't make it death metal. People think like for a while a death metal had to be fast. It's like it doesn't matter. It could be slow, mid tempo, whatever. Death metal is the feeling in the music, not the speed that they play. So getting back to modern day stuff, that same idea of like over sterilizing stuff because they want it to be precise. That they want to play like there's some kind of they want the album to sound like they're virtuoso musicians and everything's perfect and stuff, but they don't realize that the bands that were doing death metal in the early days, and then a lot of stuff that people really look back as the heyday of death metal, we weren't concerned about that stuff so much. And not that we didn't want it to be tight and good, but it wasn't just about saying, holy crap, we got to make sure every time the chorus comes in of the song that it's the exact same way or whatever. You listen to it. I mean, I don't know how all the other bands did it, but even when you look at, say, the more polished type death metal at that time, like, I don't know, Morbid Angel, Deicide or something like that, those albums, if you listen back to it, there's an energy on those albums still. Those albums don't sound like they're just tempo mapped out. That they sound like there's an actual feeling to it. But then you listen to some bands now that try to do that same kind of stuff, and it just sounds like it's weird. It's a weird thing, and I pick up on that a lot, and it really turns me off. And the worst thing about it is that a lot of bands, I remember from back in the day when like Pro Tools just came out and there became like quantizing of the drums. I'd hear these albums with these drummers that just sound like everybody was Pete Sandoval for a while,
Yes.
And I watch these bands play live, and they'd be flubbing like crazy trying to catch that speed, and it's like, what are you doing? Like,
why produce something that you're not able to reproduce?
Yes, exactly. It's like it would, the song, because the song could be probably just as good if you played it at the speed that you're capable of playing it at. You don't need to play it. You don't need to compete with, Pete Sandoval, we'll say, for instance. I mean, he's one of the best drummers for, brutal, we'll say he's one of the best drummers for, say, Morbid Angel and Terrorizer, as far as, that style he's great at. And we've toured with him. I watched him play. He's incredibly consistent, but that's him being him. He's not like faking it. Like when you see him live, he plays kind of like a machine, but he's a person doing it. And you could feel, when you feel those blast beats that he's doing come on, there's actually energy in it. It's not just because when it's all just like boxed up, the energy isn't there, because you know, you could play tight as fuck, but you could be a couple milliseconds above the beat, and it just having that diversity gives it life. I know it sounds like I mean, it's funny.
No, but this is a
get on my
discussion.
soapbox about it. But I love,
But same here.
I love, you know, real music. I want to hear bands playing real stuff. I want real passion in the music. I'm not just like, I'm not easily sold on something if it's just, you know,
Flash,
packaged through some kind of, you know, whatever, checking off all the boxes or something like that.
Yeah, and I find with a lot of newer production, I'm often left with this, and the sentence that always comes into my mind is like, that's a bit much over muchness, you know. It's like it's just everything is just overdriven. Yes, it's fast. And the discussion I had with many co-guitarists that I used to play with is when they came along with the thing, yeah, it has to be fast, and you know, I said like, well, and then my argument was, listen to Darkness Descends, listen to Rain and Blood. These albums sound aggressive because it has that push and pull. You know, it's like it always sounds like that train is gonna go out of control any moment. You know, it's gonna derail, and it's that chaotic, frantic, and it's only made more intense because of slow parts and breaks. And you know, it's breaks that do it. It's the kind of notes you pick. But just for the sake of playing fast, you're not going to get there. And many albums came out where I thought these albums might be faster than the classics. You know, this might be faster than Brutal Truth, but it doesn't have the same intensity. No way.
Exactly. You know, and I mean, with our music, you know, we early on we mixed in the slower passages with the newer passages, and it made the slower stuff, you know, sounded super slow because of the faster parts, and the faster parts sounded faster because of the slow parts. Yeah. But it just to me, it just made sense having it. It's not necessarily light and shade, but it's just different moods throughout the song that kind of transcend, you know, transition into each other in a way that, you know, makes sense, makes you feel like you're going on some sort of journey. But yeah, with you know, even bands that are trying to do a lot of slow stuff like we do, and then do fast stuff, they sometimes don't, in my opinion, don't do the transitions properly either. Because you can't do those, a lot of those doomy transitions, you can't do them properly to a grid, because they got to happen when they happen. Like, I'll use, for instance, on one of our new songs, Entrails of a Hag Queen, when we go from a faster part into like this kind of a little slower, doomier part, just for a measure or something, but it fits in there because it just, that isn't timed out. If you listen to it, it's not 100% on time, but it just feels natural when it goes into it, you know. And it was, you know, we easily could have tighten that up more, but we listen back to it and we're like, it sounds good this way. Why fuck with it? You know, it's like, yeah, there, each time it goes in the song 2 times, and both times, neither of them are perfect, that transition, but it sounds great. You know, if we could have, you know, quantized it out, or whatever you want to say, but it would have ruined the song, you know, because the way that hits has to hit naturally. You know, it's almost like, you know, it's like, I wouldn't compare myself to Tony Iommi by any means, but it's like the old Black Sabbath stuff wouldn't be great if they timed that stuff out. You know, it needs to be jammy, needs to be bluesy feeling. You know, that's what makes the intensity of the part, you know.
But don't you find that with a lot of modern production, I'm not naming names or whatever, but I had this discussion with someone the other day. It was actually an engineer, and he said, you can actually hear with a lot of albums coming out that the whole thing was sort of plotted out digitally. You know, the song was composed and was just files sent back and forth. And he said, yes, the difference of a song coming out when the band has actually practiced it and written it live in person, and there's a certain dynamic that creeps into the songwriting process that creates these, because you'll feel it. You know,
well,
like you said, now the break needs. It feels like it just needs to come now, because the rest is just 4/4. Yeah, let's paste that in 5/5/5 6/6. You know, whatever.
Well, I mean, part of it is, yeah, the song, obviously you write the song better, in my opinion, if you actually play it and feel it. But putting that aside too, just the influence of riff to riff doesn't always work, because, when riff, so we'll just say riff one ends and riff two comes in, and if they're both just cut and paste together, all it is now is like all of a sudden it changes. But, I'll use, like, when we write stuff and we play it together, that transition sometimes, instead of going like like that, it's going like into it.
Yes.
But that weirdness, it might, if you listen to just the basic track, say like on their own, you might be like, that's a little weird there. You listen to it all together, it makes total sense, and but yeah,
it's almost like a glue that comes in, it's like,
yes, I mean, you could, I think it's reasonable to say write a song. If you want to, if you're writing just some ideas of a song, that's okay. You could write that stuff on the computer, cut and paste or whatever. But you bring that to practice and you actually play the song, and then because I all the time will write stuff at home and I'll do it on the computer, and I'll usually have guitars. Sometimes I'll try to toss in a lame drum beat or something just to give a basic idea. But then I send it off to Kyle, and then we go to practice. We play the song, and then when we play the song comes out like, totally different than what we had, because once we play the riffs and we hear Kyle's ideas and drum beats, and say Chuck or Luke comes in with ideas too, it's like that original pattern, that looked good on my computer doesn't sound as good as everybody contributing to it and adding flavor to it, and but with working like that, you give yourself more work, because it's not as easy to write songs and do albums when you're not locked everything into a grid and cut and paste. I mean, so many you hear it. I mean, it's really prevalent in what I would consider the more commercial death metal bands, or like any other, like something like a new metal or something like that. I mean, that stuff sounds so sterile and cut and paste, it's just ridiculous. But I mean, there's a lot of people that seem to really like that kind of stuff, but for me it's like, I want to hear the feeling that the musicians contribute to the band, because it's otherwise, the people that are playing in the band, all they are is they're just a sound that goes in that area. You're not hearing their personality,
Yeah, they're just faces.
Yeah, it's just because let's just say there's sometimes, I'm not going to name names, but there's a person in the band that would sometimes play a riff, and you'd listen to the way he was playing it, and it sounded weird. It just didn't sound right, and it's like, you have to say, loosen it up a little bit, let it be free, and it would start to get a little better. And then I would play the same riff, and I'm not an amazing guitar player, but I have feeling in my playing. I would play the same riff, and the riff would sound good, or it would sound like it meant something. Maybe not technically better, but the feeling of the riff sounded better to me and to the other guys in the band. And it just was really a you could get you can get anybody to play the parts, but you can't get me as a player playing the parts. You can't, or just to say, we'll use Luke, for example. Luke is a great player. He comes up with great ideas. He plays with a lot of feeling. He can't be replaced as him. And we don't want him to be just a guitar player that's just, okay, you're just playing the parts perfect and that's it. We like him because he's playing, and it's like we're feeling it. We're like, oh yeah, that sounds that idea sounds killer, or not even just the riff idea, but just the way it's being played. It's like, I feel that, it's not just like the notes are here in place. It's, and
Yes, but I hear you. And I
it
think
kills me.
it
It
makes me
kills me that
it
music
makes
does
me
that.
think of all these YouTube warriors.
Yes.
They sit down and they actually the other day I thought, gee, I used to think people like George Lynch
Yes.
and were great, but I mean these teenagers are playing like a million miles. But then I asked myself, put them in a band context, have them standing up while playing,
Yes.
and write a song,
I know. I know.
and they're gone. That's
There,
probably where
there's,
it is.
there's honestly,
I mean, even George Lynch
there's,
in an interview said, like, there's so many. It scares me, you know.
yeah, yeah. Well, I know. I seen that too, and it's. There's a thing about there certain guitar players. They're so obsessed with technique, or they're so obsessed with copying their idols that they don't ever really get their own vibe. I mean, and you're 100% right. I would say, I mean, I don't know, at least from my experience, like almost the better the guitar player is as far as technique wise goes, the worse they are at playing rhythms. And if you talk to any death metal bands that play in, say, like an older school style that worked with, we'll say, quote unquote, guitar virtuosos on their albums, I would say 80% of them will say that he was great on leads, but he was terrible on the rhythms. And you'll hear, I mean, I talk about that with, people all the time. And it's such a weird thing for me because I mean, I'm not good at leads, but my rhythms, they're not even, I don't even play great rhythm all the time, but it makes sense somehow,
Yes,
but
yes.
you talk about, say like Obituary, Trevor, is he doesn't play any leads, but his rhythm playing is just makes that band amazing,
Absolutely.
um, you know,
But
you know,
that's where you have that kind of setup where that I talked to Bill Matoya as well. He said like he could, when the band entered the studio, he could immediately tell, okay, that's my rhythm guy. And then he said the trick was convincing the other guy to you're only going to play the leads and to bring that across amiably.
yeah,
And
I know.
not have a war of egos.
Well, there's, I mean, a lot of musicians, have egos. It's just the way it is. But lead guitar players, they really do. I mean, it's just, there's like a competitive edge that they have, which they don't realize that, it's not a competition,
No,
on technique. Like a lot of guitar players will just want, when it comes to sound check, they'll want to play the most cool, flashy, technical thing at sound check just so they could be like, I'm the best guitar player
yeah,
here,
yeah.
and it's just like, everyone, would just look at somebody who does something like that and just like, that's just dumb, like, because especially if you're on tour and you see that kind of stuff happen, it's like these people have been around so many musicians, they know, they're just like, oh, okay, one of these guys again, that just wants to, prove to the world they're, it's like maybe they practice the parts so much at home that they want to like show it off or
Well,
something.
now I can
But
show it.
but it's difficult on an
Yeah.
album. It's really, it's easy for, if there's no control for a guitar player to overplay on stuff, there needs to be somebody there that isn't looking at it from a selfish way of just one instrument. It has to be looked at as an overall thing. And I've learned that over time, that you really have to look at it as the big picture. It's not about any one person or any one thing. It's all about,
It should always be
making the vibe good, the song good.
exactly. It should
The
always be what makes the song good for the song. And this
Yeah,
other thing that we talk about, this sort of competition. I think the only competition you should have within yourself is trying to forge your own style. I think that is the most the greatest compliment that someone gave me many years back. He says like, you're not Flash, when it comes to the leads, and I'm not a good lead player at all. And he said like, I can pick you out and the riffs that you write. Sort of, and that for me was like not to go ha ha ha, but it sort of gave me a sense. Well, wow, I at least found that. And that's what I want.
I understand. I mean, that's a thing that I've been very fortunate to have too, which I didn't really plan it out, but I ended up realizing at a certain point, wow, I do have my own way of doing things, because I started realizing when I started working with different musicians, especially other guitar players and bass players, we would start going over riffs and they'd be like, huh, that's really fucking weird that you're doing that, and I'm just like, oh, I don't know, it just seems normal to me. Like to me, it's like simple, just, okay, that's just the way that makes sense. But a lot of people, it takes them a little while to grasp onto it, just because it's not going through, I've somehow over time just followed my own way. Like I never spent a huge amount of time playing covers. I did for a couple of years, but I never was super good at just mimicking other guitar players' work. And I just was, like I mentioned before, influenced a lot by like early Necrophagia, Necrovore, and say Dark Angel, Possessed, stuff like that. And I just took that stuff and like kind of did it my own way, like the way I would think that it should be done. I didn't sit like, now it's there's all these playthroughs on YouTube and stuff, and you can learn every song exactly the way it's supposed to be played. So everyone's learning a song the same way. And back then, it's like, yeah, sometimes I would buy like maybe an Iron Maiden book or something and try to learn how to play, really early on, learn how to play a song. But those weren't that accurate, and they never sounded that good. So I never played the covers that good. So it wasn't like like you had like maybe your local guitar teacher or somebody, local metal dude, that could teach you some stuff. But now everybody's guitar teacher is YouTube pretty much. So it's like everyone's learning from these same people, and then it's turning things into so much of the same stuff out there, which is not a good thing, because now different.
We didn't have that. What I used to do is put on LPs, slow them down.
Yeah, try to pick it out.
Even then, I only got 70% of the way, and I would get so sort of. I'd always be more interested in taking elements, but then crafting my own, and then writing my own stuff.
And I think, I mean, it sounds old fogey to say, but in my time, starting the band and getting into like the demo trading and stuff like that, there was definitely distinctions between territories of how things sounded. It's like there's still differences in music from European to US or whatever, but I mean, there was like, we were from New York, New Jersey area. There were a lot of different kind of bands, but there's something inherently the same too about some of the influences. Not a lot, but there's something. But then you go to Florida, there's something about that made that. There's a similarity somehow. Then you go to California, you go to Frisco, there's their own vibe, and then LA has its own vibe, Chicago has its own vibe, but
Sweden.
Now Sweden had their own vibe, and then Finland had their own take on it, which was like kind of like Swedish but a little different. And this stuff was really good, but now, since everything's so open, there's not as much of that. There's different styles of metal, but when you're playing, like back then, there were different styles of death metal that weren't like this kind of death metal, that kind. It was just all death metal. But you listen to Swedish death metal, you listen to LA death metal, that's different. Even though they're both death metal, or you listen to, where you can go wherever, it would still be death metal, be different. Now it's so everyone learns the same songs, listen to
much more cross-pollination happening.
Yeah, because of the internet, which in some ways is good, but in other ways it's bad, because it takes away the
uniqueness somehow.
It's a uniqueness. Like people grow up with traditions and like things they listen to and shows they've seen, like, you know, a big thing for me was when I was young, I would go to a concert and be influenced by or be inspired by it. We'll say, we had a lot of great shows. We had a lot of stuff that would just come to New York and never come anywhere else. I get a great opportunity to see, but it's different for somebody that lives in, say, Florida. They're not getting as many shows, so they might be more like, we'll say, like a lot of the Florida bands, in my opinion, are influenced by like Nasty Savage, we'll say, and a lot of the bands from New York were more influenced. We've seen Possessed a couple times play. We've seen, bands like Carnivore play. We've seen, I don't know, we had bands like Old Overkill and stuff. All these bands were like, these
But
were
you had
bands
that. But you had that with Overkill as well. Overkill didn't sound like a Frisco band.
yeah, exactly.
That New York sound was always different. Anthrax back then,
Exactly. Those bands were different. And between, because if you look at San Francisco, one of the big bands early on was Exodus. So, a lot of bands there took what they did and made it their own, but they started from a slightly different core. You could still buy albums obviously from other places, but you get inspired by those shows you go to, and you're like, a show plays and it kicks your ass. You might not want to mimic them, but you're like, it inspires you to go home and be like, fuck, I want to write a killer fucking riff like Gary Holt did, or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just natural as a musician. You just do that. So, I seen Possessed play, early on, in New York, and I came home and was just like, holy fuck, like, I got to step things up. Or I remember seeing Creator on Pleasure to Kill tour, and it was just like
intense.
Wow. Yeah, it was just like, and then you just naturally, when you play, you want to bring that intensity to it,
Yeah. But that was another scene as well, the German side. I mean, a lot of it.
Yeah, that's in Germany.
And I think a lot of the bands, I mean, Sodom, there's another band that actually had building blocks of death metal in there.
Destruction too.
But a lot of them, I think, sounded the way they sounded because they weren't technically proficient.
I know.
They weren't Gary Holt. They weren't Alex Skolnick. They do with what they could. But that made it so unique.
But that gives it makes it unique. Plus, it's just an important thing. What was I talking about this? I was talking about this on Rock Fantasy Files, actually, about Venom. It was like the Venom was so great because of, they didn't know what the hell they were doing. These were some, Welcome to Hell was some of the first songs that Mantis ever wrote on guitar, but they had the piss and vinegar and fire, and they came up with a masterpiece. And I'm sure that's the same story with a band like Sodom or Creator on A Flag of Hate or Endless Pain or something, and Destruction. And that was the same thing for Incant to some extent. It's like, yeah, exactly. I mean,
listen to some of those. If you listen to some of those leads, it's like the same lead over and over and over.
Yeah,
but it's got a vibe. It's eerie. It's.
I think it's on the first one. I can't remember offhand, but it's like it's a Total Destruction or something, where the drum beat just falls into itself, like, because I think he's playing drums on it, and he like. It just all flips over from like one way to the other way, but it just somehow it still sounds awesome. And it's like, you could get a pretentious prick that's going to be like, well, the drummer doesn't know what he's doing. But it's like, as a, I was probably 15 or 16, 17. I can't remember how old I was when I heard it. I thought it was the most evil thing I ever heard in my life. And that was enough for me to be sold on it, because going back to where we started, it's like the feeling of what the band's doing is way more important than the technical ability. I mean, we'll go on the other side. You look at Exodus, which is a really technically proficient band, isn't just good because they're technically proficient, but they are able to play these songs that have feeling to it and that means something, but they're well played. That is the key to a band. If you're a good player, I mean, I want to say that Gary Holt, he's a great player, but he also knows that at the end of the day, his cool picking and the killer riffs that he's doing means nothing if the feeling isn't there in the song, And I just get that vibe from him, that he understands that music is more than just having a talent show. Because I think, especially him, but probably the rest of the band too, could probably, they could do a massively technical album, and it could be whatever, but it wouldn't be a good album. It would just be like a talent show. But he ends up, for me, Bonded by Blood is one of the greatest thrash metal records ever, and the feeling on that is amazing. And for that time, that kind of playing was just unobtainable by me. Like I remember I used to try to play Piranha in one of my cover bands, and I was like missing like more than half the pick notes in there, because it just was impossible to get it to sound the right way.
Yeah, for sure. Same here, totally.
Like I could have took Piranha, used it as my own song, and you wouldn't even have known that it was Piranha, because I played it so bad.
You made it your own. Oh, killer. So you guys overall, to come back to Incantation, I mean, you've been very prolific, and Sect of Vile Divinities is now 2020.
I know, it's crazy.
Have you got any crazy the time? Have you got any new material on the back burner?
Yeah, we have a lot of stuff. I mean, any musician over a long break like that, you had time to like not play and do other things, but also a lot of time to write, and with the band, I mean, all four of us in the band write music. So to come up with enough songs for an album is actually quite easy, because everyone just writes like 2-3 songs and we're already like have more than enough for an album. It's more or less just weeding through it, picking it out and playing them, trying to find a coherent vibe for the whole album, which is a great thing to have, is that to have so many people put in ideas, but also so many ideas to choose from to make sure that the flow of the album is great, and then still have extra songs that you could still, use for bonus tracks or use for whatever, or use in the future. I mean, actually, what was it with, was it both Sect of Vile Divinity and Profane Nexus? It was like that album was half new songs, half old songs that we had that didn't fit on, say, the Dirges of Elysium album or Vanquish and Vengeance. Just crazy, because one good thing about us is we never really have like a problem with coming up with enough songs. We're all really inspired, but yeah, we have enough for another album, and we recorded most of it. There's a few finishing touches we have to do to it still, and we wrote a bunch of other new stuff. We decided that we were gonna go and work on an idea that we had back in the mid 2000s, but we kind of trashed the idea when we decided to do the Decimate Christendom album. But before that, we were planning on doing a Doom album on Southern Lord Records. But at that time, the death metal scene just was not in a good area for us. People just weren't that interested in what we were doing, and I just felt at that time, once we kind of got a couple of the songs down, we liked the songs, but we didn't feel that they we didn't feel like maybe we were established enough as a band to do a Doom record and not have people think that we're turning into a Doom band, because that's not the point of doing the album. Doing the album is just for us to take on, express ourselves in a little bit different way, not totally different, because we always have the Doom stuff, but just let's say expand a little bit on some of the Doom ideas and try to make a cohesive album. Not of all, it's not like every drum beat slow, but it's just based around a more doomy, sludgy concept instead of the more aggressive stuff. And it's just, it was, so we decided to pick that up too. So we have
Okay.
like a ridiculous amount of songs
Wow.
for that too. Probably too much for an album too, of just some of the slower doom songs. But we're really psyched about it because it was just fun to, kind of pick up where we left off. Say it was almost 15 years ago now, to pick up where we left off and feel confident enough as a band to be able to do an album like that and know that people are going to understand that this is just, this album might not be an album that's for all our fans, but people that are interested in some of our doomier passages can get a little bit of a taste of us indulging, really
Yes.
self-indulging in it instead of just flavor of it. Because on an album, most albums, it has its doom parts and they're important on the album, but they're usually like standout doom tracks or whatnot. So we think it'd be kind of cool to try to do something different. So we're planning on that, and we also have a 30th year anniversary release coming out. We don't have a date for it yet because everything's backed up as fuck with pressing plants now, but we have
Okay.
one where it's going to have like rarities and bonus tracks from the beginning all the way up
Wow.
until
Nice.
current and stuff, because there's a bunch of like demo recordings of songs that we have, and it's kind of fun because we have ones with like different people doing vocals. Like we have a couple of demo tracks from when Will was filling in on vocals for us for songs that were on Diabolical Conquest and stuff, and some version of some of the Diabolical Conquest songs with Craig Pillard singing when he was planning on coming back to the band and didn't work out. Then some just extra tracks that we had that we were planning on using but never used for something, and we just kind of dug those out. And it's something for the diehard Incantation fan that likes to dig in deep, which I'm a fan of
Nice.
that kind of stuff. Bands I like to dig in deep, and I think the majority of our fans like it. Might not be the album to buy if you're just like you just like, okay, I like the albums and I'm happy with that. But some people are more underground, and we wanted to give something cool for the more underground crowd. So
For sure. For sure.
it's going to be crazy though, because we're going to have that album's coming out next, the 30th year anniversary. Then we have another album, obviously our next album in the works too. So I don't know how Relapse is going to organize putting out all that stuff. And like, when we do a 30th year anniversary album, I'd like to tour for that and maybe do a bunch of like songs that we haven't played for a while, or just just do like a totally like rarity set, or just like, say demo version song set or something weird like that. For us, it'd just be fun to do, because after a full tour of playing, say, geared towards one album, even though you're tight and you love playing those songs, it's so nice to dig into some deeper tracks and do something that you don't have. You're not trying to say premiere some of your newer material, even though it's great to do. We love doing it. It's nice to, it's both sides are good. It's good to do. It's good. We love playing the new stuff. It's really fun to be able to play for our fans some new stuff, but it's always great to just play some stuff that hasn't been played for a while, or some obscure stuff too. I mean, it's funny because like people always ask us like, to play this song or that old song, we hardly ever play. And we play it, and then like half the crowd's like, what the hell song is this? But other people are like, this is the greatest thing ever. So actually maybe gearing the tour towards older rare material might actually bring out a crowd that might actually like it, and not have people look at the newer fans look at us like, what the hell is this Immortal Cessation song or whatever, like a lot of people, because you would think. It's funny because the perception of the band, it's different. They're like the people I grew up with in my age group and younger, are very influenced by our first few albums, which is totally cool, and I get it 100%. And maybe they're not quite as keen on some of the newer stuff, but there's a whole generation of people through all different areas where they got into our music, because being around for what 30 years now, there's people that got into us in the 2000s that really want to hear, blaspheme the sacrament off of Decimate Christendom, or like Hail Babylon off of Primordial Domination, that we don't normally get to fit into our set. Or then there's people that got into us, say when we did Vanquish and Vengeance was a big time for us, for newer generation of fans getting into us. So, it'd be nice to play some of those songs for people, but then so you play some of those songs and some of the people who grew up listening to us are complaining because we're not playing quite as many songs off of the first two albums. But then there's also, a whole new generation that got into us from Sect of Vile Divinity, Profane Nexus.
Wow.
So it's like now we're in a problem where, we played Mexico. We didn't play any songs off Profane Nexus, and not because we didn't want to play any songs off the album. We couldn't fit it in the set, and we figured, well, the last time we came to town, we played 3 songs off the album. So maybe this time we'll go to Mexico. We'll, we won't play songs off that. We'll toss in a few other ones that we haven't played for a while. But then people were complaining, "Oh, you're not playing my, my favorite song off Profane Nexus," and it's just like, it's impossible. You can't win. You can't win. You can't, because no matter what you do, someone's going to complain. But the fact that the real fact of the matter is when we do play shows, the majority of the people going to the show actually like the band's new album. And there's I would say it's like half that really like the new album and going to see us, and half of diehards. So we try to fit in. We try to mix it up the best we can. But it's a difficult task,
It's a luxury problem, though.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
I mean, it must be the same for Priest and those bands. I mean, gee, I wouldn't know.
Exactly. Yeah. How do you pick? It's impossible to pick a set for Priest. I mean, it's different. I guess if like a band's like a one-hit wonder, then it's easy. Like, okay, they just want to hear like this song and that song and it's done. But, there's only a few songs in our set that we kind of get crucified if we don't play. Like people want to hear Impending Diabolical Conquest. The newer song they want to hear is Carry On Prophecies, and then Ibex Moon. And those, besides those 3, we can mix it up. But if we don't play those 3,
there's some holy
people
cows.
are really disappointed, And I like playing them, but I wouldn't mind not playing them and throwing something else in. But I don't want to disappoint. Like, people really, really want to hear those songs. Everything else we just mix up, and hopefully, if we don't play Devour Death, hopefully they're happy that we play Rotting Spiritual Embodiment instead. It's like we can't play all of any one album. It's just too much, unless we're gearing towards it for some reason. But even when we do, we've played. I know I'm babbling, but we played shows and mid to late 2000s, I think, and it was for 20. I can't remember. It was for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, not Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Hall of Fame for Decibel Magazine for Onward to Golgotha, and we played just 3 shows of that whole album, and we got complaints that we didn't play enough new stuff, and I'm just like.
There you go.
Like I'm trying like people, and for years people are saying we should play more stuff off Onward to Golgotha, and so we play that whole album, and then people are complaining that so it happened. No matter what we do, people complain. We also did a few sets in the past of like the first 2 albums and the first EP, the Forsaken Morning back, I guess, and we got the same complaint. Like, why aren't you playing Diabolical Conquest, or why aren't you playing this song? Whatever. And I'm just like. We have to change. We have to do something different sometimes. Just for our own sanity.
Yeah. No, absolutely. But I'm looking forward to. Man, I really hope I can see you guys here on European soil soon.
Yes, for sure. Definitely looking forward to it.
I really hope that sort of materializes. And I've also seen that your colleagues from Immolation are hard at work with something new. Is boiling there, so it's sounding promising.
Yeah, I mean the song that I heard so far, the one I released, was a good song, and I'm
sure
it's
No.
Yeah, I'm sure it's going to be a great album. I mean, they never disappoint. You know, it's always going to be. It's always. I mean, Immolation has evolved a lot over the years, but there's a thing about them that still sounds authentic and similar, and they're probably way more atmospheric now and a little more weird on their riffs, but it still sounds like you know, it just has that
It's Immolation,
great.
totally.
Yeah, exactly. Just has a great sound to it. And I really love that band, and obviously, you know, they're great friends of mine too. But yeah, I think they're supposed to be doing a tour in Europe. In I mean, I don't think it's announced. That I only speculated because I seen some flyers for festivals and stuff
Yeah.
on the internet, but I think they're playing Europe in like March or something like
Oh,
that,
I
or
really
April
hope they
maybe.
come by our region here because they did once, and they also played in the small club that I mentioned earlier, and that was so intense. Wow, really cool.
Yeah, yeah, and it sucks because they're playing about 10 minutes from my house while I'm on tour.
Ah,
I'm like, and they're playing with another band, Mortiferon, that I want to watch. I want to see play too, as their opening band. So I want to see both bands really bad, and I'm fucking on tour. You know, I mean,
oh.
obviously I'm happy that I'm on tour, but it's like I've been home for 2 years. They
And
could
then
it
that
has to
happened.
be as soon as I go on tour. That's when they do their U.S. tour.
Damn.
But yeah, actually, I mean, if things work out for us, we do have a good chunk of stuff tentative for Europe at the moment. Supposedly, we have some stuff in midsummer, I guess, and then we also are looking at some other stuff later on the year in Europe. But like I said, it's all speculation because it seems like Europe is definitely more. I guess you could say, either taking COVID more seriously or maybe more you know, more strict or whatever. I don't know what the right word is for it, but I just know that
Yeah.
a lot different in the U.S. Even though we have some areas of the U.S. that are taking it a little more extreme, most people in the U.S. I think it's just the inherent U.S. culture where I think we're just at the point now where we're just taking our own kind of responsibility on it and just saying, like, you know, obviously we want to be smart and trying, you know, we
Yes.
don't want anyone to get sick and we don't want any problems, but at the same time we do want to move on and just
Yeah,
try to be as safe as possible, you
and have
know.
everybody use their common sense and stuff. You know, this is something that
That would help, right?
I wish the government over here would start enforcing that rather. You know, but
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, you provide. I mean, you know, provide people, or not provide, but you know, have people maybe wear masks at the venue or something,
yeah,
or maybe you know, make sure there's lots of hand sanitizer available for some, whatever it is, whatever, you know, little things you could do. Give people, you know, but to give people the opportunity to,
choose.
you know, choose themselves and how they want to deal with it. And like I said earlier on, it's like if anybody really is you know, in a category where they, you know, can potentially get, you know, die from it or something like that, you know, they should, you know, take action themselves to not put themselves in the situation as much as possible to do it and take extra precautions themselves. But then, you know, you have younger kids that aren't really, you know, don't, if they get it, they probably don't even feel it, or it's minor symptoms. They shouldn't have to not do anything because other people are not going to be, you know, take their own precautions themselves. You know, everyone
Sure.
does need to be responsible to some extent. I mean, government can only do so much to try to help the situation. And I think it came from a good spot early on, but I think they're just taking it a little bit too far in some parts of the world, in my opinion.
Yeah, in my opinion, here they're really starting to suffocate things. You know, and that's
Yeah.
I don't think that's good for anyone.
You can't eradicate a virus like that. You know, they, even when they talk about herd immunity and stuff like that, and people in America not getting shots, I understand that. I mean, I'm vaccinated and stuff, you know, but I I can't force anybody else to get
No,
vaccinated. I don't feel right. I mean, I'm not saying that, I might disagree with somebody not getting vaccinated, but I don't know them. I don't know their situation. It's not for me to tell them. All I could do is, do what I think is going to be the best thing for me to do, and they have to do what they think is going to be the best thing for them to do. And I think all this like weird political stuff that gets involved with vaccinations and the COVID stuff is really more the problem than anything else. I mean, you know,
Yeah, but that's what I find nowadays. That over the last few months, there's so much. I noticed people getting so much animosity for deciding
yes,
not to get vaccinated either right now or not at all. And I said to my partner, I said, like, shouldn't everybody have that the right to decide?
yeah, it shouldn't it doesn't I just don't understand why it's a thing. Like that's a personal
Yeah,
decision that that people make, and it shouldn't I mean, you could it's understandable that maybe the government could influence people or try to help people, make it easy for people, but you can't, when you start forcing people, people automatically push back and it's turned into something really dumb that it shouldn't be. It just shouldn't be an ego about getting vaccinated or not getting vaccinated because the vaccinated people say that you know we would have herd immunity if everyone got vaccinated. But the fact is that you don't control the herd anyway. So
yeah.
you can't force people to do it. You have to live in the world that you really live in. You can't live in the world that you want to live in. And the problem these days, I think, with a lot of stuff is that people don't want to live in the real world. They want to live in their fantasy world of how they look at it, and they want everything to be that way. And it's like, it isn't that way. You live in the world where some people, want to get vaccinated, some people don't, and you have to that's just life. It's like
Like
you can
this
bitch all you want, but
almost like
don't,
this control freak syndrome. You know? Yeah.
all you could, I mean, if you don't want to be friends with somebody because they're not vaccinated, that's your personal opinion. But I don't see why people are like,
You can.
vaccination, you get it or don't get it, like causing problems seems really ridiculous.
That's crazy.
But
John, signing. Last question from my
yep.
side. Anything cool coming up with the Hudson Valley Squares?
Well, I know that they're doing I don't know if they announced it. I hope that Pete Parr doesn't get pissed off, but I don't know if I'm doing it. I'm not sure, but they're doing a like rate the albums a comparison thing with Black Metal by Venom and Iron Fist by Motorhead.
Oh,
So
cool.
that's going to be an interesting one. I hope I could be a part of that one. As far as
why did you mention Pete?
Yeah, Pete Pardo. Yeah, he's the main guy.
Why would he be pissed off?
Well, I don't know if he announced it yet or not.
That now that you said something. Okay.
Yeah. No, I didn't know because we talked about it, but I don't know if we were recording the episode or it was after that we talked about it. But
Okay.
then as far as the Rock Fantasy Files, I don't know. There's a bunch of things we're talking about, but I haven't been 100% in the loop. I'm once Steve comes up with some ideas because I've just been too busy lately to really
Obviously,
dig into it. But I've still been showing up. I've been showing up to do some of the episodes, but I haven't. For a while, I was helping kind of organize them. But Steve kind of knows now with myself and Robin both getting back into touring cycles. It's a little more tough, to do some of the legwork because we had to do it was. We had to do it. I mean,
things are kicking off for you guys now.
Yeah, and I'm gonna keep doing it. When I'm home and stuff like that. But I think on the road it'd be kind of tough. I was joking about it, and I was like, maybe one night I'll log in from our show on stage, while we're playing, and just to say what's up on the show.
Yeah, very cool. Do it.
Yeah, I'll try doing it if I don't feel too uncomfortable. But yeah, but thank you so much. I appreciate the.
Yeah, John, it's been really nice chatting.
Yeah, it's been totally good, and totally appreciate the opportunity, and we look forward to getting over to Europe, and definitely when we're at a show or at a fest or something, definitely come up to me and just say what's up.
I'll keep
Yeah,
my
for
eyes
sure.
peeled, and as far as Partisan is concerned, and obviously also the rest of the German landscape, to see if you
Yeah,
sort of come by in the vicinity.
yeah. But thank you so much. I
That would
appreciate
be
it.
really cool.
And danke schön.
Yeah, bitteschön. Have a good one.
Oh, one before I go, one question. Are you said you lived in South Africa?
Namibia, to be precise. I only studied in South Africa. Yeah,
Oh,
Namibia is.
okay. So you were German, but you went to school there.
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool. I wasn't sure if you were South African moving to Germany. That's all.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
I was born there, raised, and then I moved over to Germany only later.
oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
cool,
yeah.
awesome.
Used to be German colony. So
Oh, okay,
Europe had
yeah,
its
cool.
fingers in all of Africa.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay, well, anyway, take care.
Awesome.
Thank you
John, have
very
a good
much.
one.
Okay, see ya. Bye
Ciao.
bye.